Assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is Imran from A Continuous Charity. I want to welcome everyone to this amazing webinar we have today, Fundamentals of APA Style Writing with Sister Dalia El Metwally. She is a English instructor at Worden County Junior College. In addition to teaching, Sister Dalia is also busy completing her PhD at the University of Louisiana Lafayette in English with a concentration in linguistics. So do be patient with us while we work on our presentation today. We're going to have an amazing webinar full of multiple benefits. And then by the end, we're also going to have a free gift for everybody if they want more help with APA help and APA style writing. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Sister Dalia.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Jazakallah khair, Brother Imran, for the beautiful introduction. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make me better than what you've said, and may Allah accept from all of us everything that we do to please Him. Alhamdulillah, with Allah's grace, I teach in a couple of colleges. One of them is Wharton County Junior College. The other is Guidance College, which is an Islamic college that offers undergraduate and graduate degrees. I also do other stuff with ICNA, alhamdulillah. So without going any further, let me go ahead and start our presentation, documenting sources in APA style. This is one of the most important styles that we use because it actually touches upon different disciplines that we have in our studies. And so, somebody might come along and say, what's the difference between APA and MLA? So with APA, we actually use social sciences. We use it in social sciences, psychology, linguistics, sociology, economics, terminology, and religion, besides, of course, business and nursing. And as such, it just covers a very wide array of disciplines that we have in our college degrees, our graduate degrees, and of course, out there in the world. As far as the MLA is concerned, it's mostly into literature, English studies, language, literature, foreign languages, literary criticism, comparative literature, and cultural studies. So, of course, because of my work, I use both alternately. Maybe at some point, if anybody wants us to go over the MLA, we can certainly have that as another workshop, inshallah. So today I'm going to be covering a number of things. This is my outline. I'm going to start with the introduction. So whenever we start working on a research paper, your professor says you need to work on a research paper or you need to actually get promoted, so you have to work on a research so that you publish it in some of the journals. One of the very first things we need to do, or we have to do, is we have to actually figure out, what am I going to research? What exactly is the problem that I need to research? And as such, we get to the point of problem identification. What is it that I need to look at? Because it is an area that is problematic in terms of not enough knowledge is already on the table in that area. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the knowledge of everything, and we are all still learning, and we are all struggling to kind of achieve that. So the very first step is going to be problem identification. The next step is going to be the problem statement. And a problem statement is actually realizing the difference between the process and the product. In other words, we have to be objective in describing how things should work, how state why it matters, why do we really need to understand that, figure out that problem, explain the financial cost, explain whatever claims or hypotheses we're going to have, propose a solution, explain the benefits of the proposal. So that's all within that problem statement. And then we move on to the hypotheses formulation. And this is an educated prediction. So I am hypothesizing that. I am actually claiming that, right? So, for example, I'm claiming that students of immigrant parents may be struggling with specific aspects of the English language. So, for example, punctuation. right? And of course, there is research about that already, but I'm just giving that as an example. And then we actually move on to data validation. So before we get there, we do data collection first. According, as you can see my graph here, we've got the data collection. So I'm going to collect the data, and then I have to validate it. Is this objective? Is this good? Is this, we have to evaluate that data. And is this worthy? There are a number of category or criteria that the data has to meet in order to be viable for us to use it in research. And then we move to data analysis. How am I going to look upon this data? How am I going to actually integrate it in my work? What am I going to do with it exactly? And is it going to help me or not help me? And what happens if the data I have may not go with the results of what I've actually done with like some kind of survey research or different types of research. And then I go ahead and reach my conclusions, and recommendations are based on interpretations of results. So today we're going to be talking about data collection, and we're certainly not going to talk about all aspects of data collection. That this would require many workshops, but we are just going to specifically talk about what am I going to do with that data? How am I going to integrate it into my research? Now, Guidance College has a whole class, like a whole course that actually I teach that class. It's about research methodology. How am I going to do the research from A to Z? And there are a number of other colleges out there in the United States and in other places that does the same thing. So what does APA stand for? It's American Psychological Association. It's one of the largest scientific and professional organizations we have in the United States. And of course, there are different other styles out there, but because we are focused upon those aspects that we were talking about, we chose to go with APA. As a disclaimer, my examples are not exhaustive by any means. There are more examples and more styles out there. So what is the general format of the APA paper? The margins are very, very important. And just like MLA, they are 1 inch on all sides. And they include 4 sections, 4 major sections. And this is, of course, a departure from MLA. So we have to have a title page. We have to have an abstract, the main body, and references. The headers and footers within the pages have to be within the page's margins. And APA prefers that we actually have the endnotes instead of footers, but you certainly can have footers. For student papers, we actually only have in the margin the page numbers. But then if we're talking about professional papers, we go back to the headers. We have to double space every single thing in our manuscript. We can only leave 1 space after the periods and other punctuation marks. There are no spaces left before them. And that's the same with MLA. We have to indent the first line of each paragraph for 1/2 an inch. And we, again, as I mentioned, endnotes are on a separate page. The title page itself should contain, on the top right-hand corner, should have the page number, and the title of the paper has to be centered and bold. That is a departure from all previous APA editions. So for the very first time, now it has to be bolded. Before, it was just centered. So if you guys have been working with previous editions of APA, that is one big change. The author's name, and the subtitle comes after it, and then we've got the author's name, institutional affiliation, course number and name, instructor's name, and assignment due date. Now, this is one question that my students at Wharton College always tell me, like, what are we looking at here? Are we really looking at the date I wrote my paper? No, it is the date the assignment is due. So if we've got really amazing students who have everything written way ahead of time, they still have to put the due date of the paper. So a professional paper is a little bit different. It just slightly departs from this, where we actually have the running head on the top left-hand corner, which is a difference between the student paper and a professional paper. And of course, the running head takes us back to the sixth edition, right? So the seventh edition is where we have the difference. So the title page would look something like this: no last name, just simply the page number on the top, as we can see it right there, nothing else. We don't have the running head here. We just have our title, our subtitle, they're both in bold. And then we're going to actually have our name, etc. You've got some of the information right here: name of student, department of, or school, course number, all the stuff we talked about. Now the title page changes from the sixth edition. We have a number of things that have actually changed. I've mentioned a few of them already, but among the things that I need you to watch out is that the new seventh edition gives us more flexibility with what we're going to be actually writing, right? So it's going to give us the flexibility to go ahead and use Calibri 11, Arial 11, Lucida, etc., etc. The title should be set in boldface. We talked about that already, unlike the previous edition. Students' papers do not need to have a running head. A professional paper includes a running head on every page. And the word abstract should also be in bold face. So this is how it's going to look like when we talk about the abstract, right? So the abstract is also going to be bolded, and that is also new. One other thing I need you all to remember is that we do not indent the first line of the abstract. It's actually put in a full block, but then we indent whenever we're writing our keywords. And then the words, keywords is actually, that word itself is actually put in italics or italics, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So again, this is how it looks like. This is a professional paper. That's why we have a running head here. And I wanted to get an example of a professional paper. So the abstract, what do we actually have in the abstract? We have concise summary of the key points of your research. So practically, we're going to look at the research paper and we're going to see, like, where's the research topic? What is the research question? Who are the participants? What's the methods, results, data analysis, conclusion? All those big words can actually be simplified in this slide. What I tell my students at college is it's so easy. All you have to do is find your thesis statement, put it there, find your hypotheses, put it in simpler words, your topic sentences of each paragraph. If you've written your paper correctly, this should have the whole idea of your actual paper. And then the concluding sentence and then transitions need to be used so that the paragraph flows. So as such, it becomes so important for us to understand that whenever you're reading it, you're going to go ahead and try and figure out, where do I need to put however, where do I need to put moreover, or where do I need to put specific words that would actually help me get that paper to flow nicely like we want it to. Now, the actual first page of the research paper will always be page number 3. And page number 3 is the page that has the title again. This is where the paper itself starts. So it becomes so important for us to actually put that title again in caps, right? So that caps that is used, it's just, I'm sorry, it's sentence caps, not regular. I'm saying this wrong. I'm sorry. It's every single word is capped except for the smaller words like in, of, etc. So the T would be capitalized, the Y would be capitalized, the R would be capitalized, etc. And then the very first line we have is going to be something that we actually indent, as we always indent in any regular paragraph. So it's so important for you to indent it here. Now, the next thing we're going to be talking about is the APA special formats. What are special formats? These are actually where we go ahead and put the titles, right? So we got the very first level is going to be centered, boldface, title case headings, right? And then the second level is going to be left aligned, boldface. So practically the first level is going to be centered boldface like we're used to, like I've just showed you right now. The only difference is that in 6, it was not boldface. Now with the levels, second level, third level, we have some changes. So for example, we actually have the left aligned, it's the same, but then it's boldface again. And we have title case headings, right? So title case, that's where I'm only putting in caps the first letter of each big word. Of, in, are considered small words, so we're not going to capitalize them. Then we have the level 3, which is left aligned, boldface again, but italicized. This time it's going to be italicized, and using the title case. The text itself starts on a new paragraph. In level 4, it's a little bit different, which is we're going to put a period and the text starts right after it, right? Most people don't really get into level 4, but I just needed you to know that it is something that we that is there, and you can always look at level 5 as well. So special formats. It's very, very important for us to understand that numbering the tables and the figures becomes an essential part of the work we do. So we are going to actually make the numbers very clear. This is an example I have here, figure 1, but then the words underneath it are in italics, right? So you see an illustration of branching structure. Now, the thing is that this would come above the table or above the figure, unlike in the 6th edition where they were underneath. So that is a big difference as well. The next thing we're going to be talking about is APA InText Citations. And what we need to understand with that InText Citations is that we first have to understand the basics before we get into talking about the different InText citations. And when we talk about that, we're really talking about ethics, capture, reference. So what does this really mean? It means that whenever we are integrating our sources into the material, we have to make sure that we are not plagiarizing. That's where the ethics come in, right? So plagiarizing is a serious matter. It actually, we have to say where we got whatever we got. We have to simply say, this is really not mine, because if I don't say it, I'm actually cheating. I'm stealing something that doesn't belong to me. So we are going to make sure we're integrating sources in a very specific way, where we're using, these are not my words, I'm getting this from somebody else. Now, when it comes to capturing, we actually have to quote, right? Or paraphrase, because I'm going to say, these are not my words, so please go ahead and check into these so that you would figure out, this is, I got this from somebody else, or even though I put them in my own words, I'm going to always give the person I'm taking the information from. Now, reference, on the other hand, again, we have to, in text, we have to put between parentheses what I got from somebody else, and then I also have to reference it at the very end. Among the things that some of our students are doing is that they actually put stuff in references, but then they actually do not take that further and tell us where they got those specific parts and in the text itself, right? So it becomes really, really important that they would actually tell us where they're getting the different, okay, I've got a reference in my references, but then in the text itself, I don't know which part was taken. Now, in college, a student will lose a lot of points. The student is not considered plagiarizing, but the student will lose a lot of points for not actually attributing the work to the person that wrote those words. So the basic rules is that you follow the author date method of InText citation. And what that really means is that we actually going to always start with the author's name followed by the date. And we were going to use that whether I'm quoting or whether I'm paraphrasing. And if we are referencing an entire book, then we are just going to mention the author's name and the year, and we do not need to have the page numbers. Because what page numbers are we going to say PP from this to that? So we're just going to avoid that completely. Instead of saying from page 1 to page 200, it doesn't make any sense. So we just completely drop that page number. And we have to have a complete reference in our reference list at the end of the paper. When capitalizing titles, we have to remember to capitalize both words if there is a hyphenation. And I've got an example here in front of all of you. The very first thing I want to talk about is how are we going to cite Quran? So APA has made our lives really simple. For classical religious words such as Quran, provide the name of the text along with the surah and verse reference. So we're actually going to say the Quran, right? And the reason we're going to say the Quran is simply some people don't know it's Quran. So we just have to talk to, we have to always understand the audience. Now, if you're turning in a paper to a Muslim person in a Muslim college, you may actually choose to drop the words the Quran and instead say the surah number, right? And of course, or the surah name. Of course, surah number is right there, 56. But I have down here Surah Al-Waqi'ah, right? Because I'm specifying something. Surah Al-Waqi'ah, everybody understands. Every Muslim understands Surah Al-Waqi'ah. But imagine if you're turning this paper in to a non-Muslim professor or general readers out there, general public laymen, what is Surah Al-Waqi'ah? What does that mean? They wouldn't even know how to pronounce it in the first place. So you have to have the word the Quran. Again, know your audience, address your audience, right? It's one of those basic rule of thumbs. We have to understand who we're talking to. Quran has to be written in Arabic first because Allah's words are in Arabic. It doesn't matter if you know Arabic or if you don't know Arabic. We all have access to websites where we can copy the Arabic ayah and copy the translation. So writing those words are essential. And you would say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right? And then you put the ayah you want to do. The APA treats the verses, the separation between verses, like the separation between poetry lines with a slash. So also remember that. I've got a slide where I talk about the period, so I'll wait for me to talk about it in that slide. Again, remember your audience, know your audience, address them. Citing hadith, after you cite, you actually put the actual hadith. You are going to go ahead and, of course, you're going to put the translation. You don't need to have the Arabic. In all my papers, I actually mention the Arabic hadith, but you certainly don't need to. And you need to mention the source book, the book number, and the hadith number. So it's going to be the hadith, right? Because remember, know your audience. If I'm only in a Muslim environment, then saying Sahih al-Bukhari is going to be enough, exactly like my example down there. But apart from that, I have to be very clear, right? Sometimes you want to, Dar es Salaam has its own numbering. So if you're using the numbering of Dar es Salaam, you need to specify it's Dar es Salaam. Because these are not going to be the same numbers we find in Dar es Salaam translated, right? So these are not the same numbers we find in Arabic hadith books. Abbreviations in Islam. It is so essential that you do not abbreviate Allah's name. or abbreviate sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because it is against the adab with Allah. So at-ta'addub ma Allah is respecting Allah and having adab, good manners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As such, we are never going to put Allah's name as an A. You find some people saying ASA. What is that? That absolute lack of ta'addub ma Allah, right? Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah has talked about that concept when they started a long time ago in the Arab world, to write sallallahu alaihi wasallam as salam, and which is the just abbreviations of the different words. And he has written so much about it, and he said that it has Allah's name, it's lack of respect for Allah, and it's lack of respect for Rasulullah. So subhanAllah, now people have just, taken that into further steps where they start saying ASA or JAK. Subhanallah, may Allah guide us all, and we make Allah our witness that we have been, as Muslim Islamic college teachers, we've been spreading the word to say never do that. Now, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you either write it down like peace and blessings be upon him, or sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you can actually write that. But remember, if you're going to write sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a non-Muslim, again, know your audience, right? I keep on mentioning that. And radiallahu anhum is the same thing. Now, if you guys have your cameras on you, you can certainly take a picture of this slide, because the way you're going to write sallallahu alaihi wasallam on Word, and it's just on Word, right? Microsoft Word, is you're going to type FDFA in capital letters, and then you're going to hold alternate X at the same time, and then you just give a space and it will automatically turn to sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've got similar letters or macros for Jalla Jalaluh and for the word Allah, but we don't have anything for Jallahu anhum. So that is just kind of a little bit of advice here. The author date format is the last name, year of publication, and page numbers. So I've got an example here. I was just talking about Ibn Taymiyyah. So Ibn Taymiyyah, the year of publication is 1997. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah died or passed away, Allah yarhamu, 700 and something years ago, right? But we are actually going to be using the date of publication. If we're writing in English, that publication is actually in the 20th century. So we're using those dates, not the dates when he wrote his actual book. And then we're going to have that number for the English that we have put as a page number. As you notice, we've got the P here. So use the last name, year of publication, after paraphrase as well. So we're going to put it with quotations. We're going to put it in paraphrase. Which tense do we use? MLA says use present tense. APA use past tense, not present tense, because remember, it's different disciplines, right? So past tense or present perfect tense is what we need to be using. So for example, Jones 1998 found, or Jones 1998 has found, right? So it becomes very important for us to figure out which verb I'm going to use. And of course, in APA, it's actually much easier to use the past tense. It's more intuitive. With MLA, where we have to use present simple tense, some students kind of struggle through that because it kind of doesn't really make sense to them. But, APA is easier in this context. Always remember that we're going to italicize titles of longer works like books, edited collections, documentaries, all that sort of stuff we're going to italicize. And we are going to put in text, we're going to put the titles of shorter works like chapters in quotation marks. Chapters or essays or short stories. I mean, short stories will take us to MLA, but anything that is within a larger context, a larger book, is going to be in quotation marks. Periods. So when do we use a period inside a quotation mark? And when do we put the period outside the parentheses? So when does it come here and when does it come there? So the rule of thumb is that if If this is the last sentence in a paragraph, you're going to be starting a new paragraph or ending your paper. You put the period inside the quotation marks. And then you put the parentheses after it, and there is no second period after it, as you can see. However, if there's a second sentence that comes after it, we're going to put the period outside the parentheses and outside the quotation marks. Now, the same applies for a comma. If I've got a rest of a sentence here, I'm not going to put the comma inside the quotation marks. However, if I do not have parentheses with a page number, let's say it's something that doesn't have a page number, then I'm going to put the comma inside the quotation marks. How do I do a single author? If I mention the single author in a signal phrase, that means in the actual part of my sentence, Ibn Taymiyyah in 1997 advocated a policy of fair prices and fair profits, that's how it's going to look like, right? So I'm just going to mention it here. I'm not going to put it in the parentheses with the page number because the name has already been mentioned in the signal phrase. However, if I did not mention the name on the signal phrase, I have to put it in parentheses. I'm going to separate with a comma, the date, comma, the page number. So always remember the date follows the name, the author's name, whether because it gets placed in the signal phrase or it gets placed in the parentheses. What do I do with two authors? We are going to put the last name of each author. And if we put it in the signal phrase, that's how it's going to look like. Very similar to what we just talked about. We're going to use an and. However, we're going to use an ampersand inside parentheses. And again, this is the best way for me to show it to you, just to give you that example. So how about three or more authors? We're only going to list the first author's name followed by etal in the signal phrase, right? So it's going to be Smith, etal, 2011, argued, sorry, that's missing a D, argued that tougher gun control is not needed in the United States. So this is how we are going to be presenting it. Practically Smith, etal. However, remember that sometimes I'm not sure how many people I actually have that I'm going to be talking about. So maybe some of the people, maybe Smith, there is a John Smith, and there is, in the following paragraph, I'm talking about Jack Smith or, Morgan Smith or something. In this case, I may need to mention the author's first name or the first initial just so that I make that a distinction. Now, with the citations, I'm going to go ahead and again put the Jones etal, and then I'm going to put the 2013 in here. This is what I was talking about, avoiding ambiguity. We talked about etal, so I'll give you one example of ambiguity. There's a second example of ambiguity. What we're going to do, let's say I've got Jones and Smith have written two papers, and I'm actually using both papers in my research paper as references, as sources. So I actually have to write out the names of the authors so that I say, these are two different papers. Well, they've got the same year, but they've got different contributors on that paper. So I'm actually going to show you how I'm going to write it. So we're not going to say John's etal. This is how we're going to write it in the signal phrase, and this is how we're going to write it in the parentheses. So how about digital or non-print sources? We're going to still follow the author date method of InText Citation. We're going to include both a reference list entry and an InText Citation. So this way, we actually we make sure it's in the InText, like I told you at the beginning, and it's at the end as well. So it's inside the actual paper, and it's at the very end in details. We are not going to include the page number because digital does not have page numbers, right? So practically, we're not. And we don't even have to say no NP for no page number. But if we don't have a date, we will need to say ND for no date, right? And there's an example of that I have here right in front of you. If these lawful activities are accompanied by a good intention, they turn into acts of worship. That's from Islam Fatwa, and then it's ND, no date. Passing references. Sometimes for passing references, it's enough to put the URL because anybody can just copy the URL and get into the actual document to figure out, the actual website to figure out where I am. For example, islamqa.info /English/ the actual number, the fatwa number. This becomes so helpful because if you want to read more about what Ibn Uthaymeen said in addressing that issue in his fatwa, as I'm saying right here, all you have to do is copy this or just copy the number and get into islamqa.info. And since I'm mentioning that, let me go ahead and tell you that this is one of the most powerful fatwa websites we have. So if you haven't used islamqa.info before, please do. It's in a number of languages. It's in English, Arabic, of course, and Urdu and other languages. They've done an amazing job. May Allah bless them and put barakah in everything they do. Now, sometimes we're using an organization or an author that is not known. So we're going to include the title of the article or the book in place of the author's name. And we are going to place the title in quotation marks, right? Dutifulness to non-Muslim parents, 2001, or according to the Permanent Committee for Scholarly Research and Ifta in 2000. So this is how we're going to go about it. Short quotations, anything less than 40 words. You really have to sit down and count the 40 words so that you make sure you are less than 40 words, as we're saying. In this case, you are just going to introduce the quotation with the author's name in a signal phrase or at the very end, and then you're going to include the date of publication in parentheses. If there is a page number, you will also include it, right? As Al-Albani in 1987 said, not to differentiate between the Quran and the Sunnah with regard to obligations of accepting both of them together in establishing laws, and that's page 15. Again, if the author is not named in the signal phrase, we are going to name the author in parentheses, and I've got another example for you, and I'm trying to alternate between secular examples and Quranic or Islamic examples, so you kind of get a taste for both so that you see which way you need to go. So when paraphrasing, we're still going to use the author and the year of publication, and we may use the page number. Because we are given in paraphrasing the option. Now, I usually tell students, instead of trying to figure out, am I using the page number here or not? Since you have an option, always use page numbers, but remember, you only need the page numbers in quotations, direct quotations with quotation marks. But if you're paraphrasing, you don't need it, but if you put it, it's not a problem. In long quotations, anything that is 40 words or longer, we're going to have a freestanding block. We're going to omit all quotation marks. And again, this did not change from the 6th edition. And we are going to start the quotation on a new line, and then we will indent 1/2 inch from the left margin. We'll type the entire quotation on the new margin. Remember, no quotation marks. And then sometimes we are quoting a whole paragraph, so we're actually going to indent an extra 1/2 inch for the first line. So this is an example. Many scholars address the issues of Iman and Kufr of the people who ridicule Quran and the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And then I'm starting here a new paragraph. In his explanation of Riyadh al-Salihin, Imam Nawawi is stipulated, and then I'm actually going 1/2 inch. So that's how it's going to look like. It's going to be double. It's going to be 2 1/2 inches. And then I'm going to put my quotation. Since it's already in a block format, my period comes before the parentheses, not after, no quotation marks. So far, we have covered the general format, the special format, and InText Citations. At this point, I'm moving on to talk about the reference page. How will it look like? We're going to begin our references on a separate page. Somehow students tend to forget that and put it right underneath the last paragraph. Please don't do that. Put it on a separate page. This is the style. These are the rules, but it's also the rules in MLA. Label the page references. Remember, it has to be centered and it has to be bolded, boldface. And we're going to put it on the top. Don't forget the page numbers running throughout the whole document. Double space all citations. That's the same for the whole document. Indent the second line and subsequent lines. So this is exactly what we do in MLA. It's what we did in the 6th edition of APA. So there is no change here. We are creating what we call a hanging indent. A hanging indent is where the first line is flushed with the left margin and the second line is indented inside. All references list must correspond to references in your main text. But remember, your main text may have passing references like websites, like Islam QA, for example, is the example I gave you. That does not have to have a reference in the reference list. But anything in the reference list has to have something in your paper. We have to italicize all titles of longer work. We need to maintain the punctuation and capitalization of the original journals or the original books. Sometimes they use like capital letters and small letters in a specific way to form like, some kind of a trick like community, and right, with the C being capital and the T being capital. Do not italicize or italicize titles of shorter work, but also do not use quotation marks. So that's one difference between MLA and APA. However, this did not change from 6th edition APA to 7th edition. In titles of books, chapters, articles, reports, web pages, or other sources, capitalize only the first letter of the first word of the title. Now, if the original title has, in an actual book, has a specific play on the capitalization, we are going to copy that. Otherwise, we are just only going to highlight, capitalize just the first letter of the first word, and then the letter that comes of the next word after a colon or a dash, and we also have to capitalize all proper nouns. All authors' names should be inverted. Last name first, then first name. Again, that did not change from the 6th edition, and this is specifically clear. So those of you who have been using it do not have to worry about any changes there. Author's first and middle names should be written as initials. We're not going to write the full name, we're going to write initials. Write author's first name. If two authors have the same last name, then you just need to, in this case, write the first name. So give the last name and first name initials for all authors. Particular work and to include, so practically, if we have 20 authors, we are going to write all of them, and right before the 20th, after the 19th, we're going to use the ampersand. So we're going to have the last name and first initial, last name, first initial, right? And then we are going to put the ampersand in there. For the 21st name, if we actually have 21 or more authors, we are going to use ellipses after the 19th name, but we are not going to put an ampersand. So the reader is looking at it and goes like, oh, ampersand, that means this is the last name. Oh, now I can see dots, ellipses, and then I can actually see no ampersands. That means they are way more than the 21. What is DOI? It's a digital object identifier. It's a specific format, a string of letters and numbers and symbols that makes it, that is actually completely unique to a published work, and it makes it so much easier to actually identify that work and go to it directly. So sometimes websites close, sometimes they stop working, and that becomes something that is always constant, doesn't change. So DOIs, of course, are the preferred thing to use with APA and MLA. But sometimes we don't have these, so we're going to be using URLs. I've got an example here where I'm showing you an actual DOI. I'm also showing you that hanging indent that we talked about. So you've got last name, first initial, comma, ampersand, last name, comma, first initial, period. Of course, we have a period after the first initial every single time. You're going to open the parentheses and put the year, and then you're going to have a period right after the year of publication. And as you can see, this is our title, Data and Experience Design. Since it's not italicized, we automatically know it is an article or a chapter. After the colon, we're going to have another capital letter. We're just going on with it. And then this is our actual journal, Purdue Journal of Service Learning and International Engagement. After that, we have a comma, and we have the volume number and the edition number between parentheses, another comma, and page numbers without PP. And then we've got the UOI. So how are we going to do single authors in periodicals? Practically what I just showed you. So we're going to use the author date format, author, initial. You can use one initial or two initials. APA says first initial and middle initial. Your title of the year of publication, title of the article. Just the first letter is capitalized, and everything else I've already talked to you about with the volume, issue number, or edition number. Sometimes it's either. I've got an example here, Kamali MH, 2018. This time I've specified it's December because he has more than one article, actually more than one, article published in the same year, right? So I'm specifying this is the one in December, not the one in June or March. I can't remember when is the other one. And then this is the title of my article, Female Genital Mutilation Forbidden in Islam. And then the journal title is New Straits Times. As you can see, there are no page numbers because it's digital. Okay, two authors in a periodical. We are going to do the same thing with an ampersand. Everything else stays the same. Sarumi, IA, and Ansari, 2017, establishing the legitimacy of a child between DNA profiling and classical methods of Islamic law. And then the journal is going to be italicized. And then we know the rest of it. Up to 20 authors, I've already explained to you. See, it looks crowded. This is a new, this is what I was explaining to you. And this is a change from from the 6th edition. So, we're really looking here at this, and you'll find the ampersand right before the last name. 21 authors, I've already explained all of that. This is the ellipsis I told you about, no ampersand. Articles in magazines. Articles in magazines follow the same standard formats for periodicals. So we're going to have Al-Munajjid, Muhammad Saleh, but then it's M and S, right? And it was published in 2006, Prohibitions That Are Taken Too Lightly. And this is an article in Islamic Propagation Office. And then you've got the issue number, the volume or issue number. And then this is another example. This is a secular example. I wanted again to show you that there is a comma and then a month if there are more than one edition or more than one article in, more than one article in the same year. And this is how we do the rest of it. I've been explaining this, so I think it's clear. I don't want to bore you guys to death. Articles in a newspaper are similar to the formats of periodicals. The only difference is that sometimes we have 1A and 2A because sometimes in newspapers pages go in A and B, etc. So you actually specify in Arabic or the Islamic stuff. They usually do not have that. So I've got Goldstein, LB 2010, September 6, Muslims should be free to worship. Daily progress. So digital sources. We don't need to use the words retrieved from anymore. Thanks God, alhamdulillah. So we're done with that. We actually can put the URLs or a DOI, and everything is exactly what I have already told you. It works. Again, the example here is I've got Ibn Taymiyyah. And then the This is actually an actual book. And so we have it in italics, enjoining right and forbidding wrong. الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر, and that is shown in a Balagha website. Author names are written last name followed by author initial. So that's in a book formatting. Again, almost exactly everything I've been telling you, not much different. And I've got a secular example here. Translated books. So we need to talk about translated books. We are going to be using, actually, we have to say it's a translated book, right? So author's name, year of publication, title of work, and then between parentheses, we're going to write the first initial of the translator. So we're not going to flip the translator's name. The first initial comes first, and then the last name of the translator, comma, and the actual word trans with a period, meaning this guy is a translator, this woman is a translator. And then we're going to have the publisher, and then we're going to have the original work published here if we have that, right? So sometimes we're using Ibn Taymiyyah and it's just completely translated and we know exactly when he wrote it. We hardly know any the exact dates of any of the books, right? But there are a few books that we actually know their exact dates, and so you would write it there. And I've got here Ibn Rajab and the Humility in Prayer, and the translator is Abu Rumaysa, and it's Dar Sunnah, that's the publishers. How do I reference Quran? Piece of cake. APA style does not require a reference list to include any classical religious works. So it's not required. If you really want to do it, you can, but it's not required. So you are not going to put anything that is religious in your references or anything that is ancient Greek or Roman works. So you might not need to put Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, any of those people. This includes the Quran and the Bible. But sometimes instructors tell you, you know what? I really need to know which translation you used. So in this case, you're actually going to specify English translation and parallel Arabic text, right? This is Abdul Halim. This is the Quran, the translated Quran that has been approved by ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America. I'm one of the teachers. So this is the one that we have approved. We have approved. And so this is used by almost all our ICNA chapters throughout the United States and in Canada as well. Book formatting. Author's first name may be written to avoid ambiguity, just exactly as we have done in the InText Citations. If the translator's name is unknown, write the name of the organization that translated. Sometimes we just have to say, it's Dar es Salaam. We have no idea who translated it. It's just that, people who are doing the work for Allah's sake and they don't want their name published because they need more thawab. So in this case, we're just saying Dar es Salaam publishers and distributors. Edited book. Author's name are written last name followed by author's initial, right? So again, you're gonna have author's name, title of the work, and then when we come to editors, we're gonna put the initial first name's initial, and then the full last name, and then we've got editor. But remember, the author himself or herself, their names are switched around. But in case of an editor or a translator, we do not switch it around. For example, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya, right? We can just write al-Jawziyya, comma, Ibn al-Qayyim. Maybe, you're going like, oh, there are a couple of different al-Jawziyya. Which one are you talking about? And we're talking about provisions for the hereafter. And it was translated by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Tamimi. So we're going to write M for his initial and the rest of it, and it is Dar es Salaam. So what if we have a translated and edited book? We're going to have both at the same time. We've got al-Asqalani, right? And then we've got his initials and attainment of the objective according to evidence of ordinance, Bulugh al-Maram min Adilat al-Ahkam. And what you're going to do here is you may choose to put the translated, the actual Arabic in Roman script, because if it's something like Bulugh al-Maram, it's such an important text that everybody actually knows, right? Or almost everybody knows. So you might want to do that because attainment of objectives does not ring the bell for most people who are familiar with the book in Arabic. And then you're going to have the the editor's name. And in this case, we have not written the S Cook. We wrote Selma Cook because maybe there's another Cook. Cook is a very, very common name. So maybe there's another Cook elsewhere. And if you end up writing one name out, you'll need to write the other name out as well. You cannot write one name and then the initial of the second name. What happens if we're quoting or using a reference from a chapter in an edited book? The pages of the chapter or essay are cited in parentheses after the book title in an edited book. So this is the difference. Otherwise, we put the page numbers without that. If we see PP, it means we're automatically looking at pages from an edited book, and some kind of an anthology, for example. I've used here the example of Provisions of the Hereafter. Multi-volume book, we're going to write the volume number. So again, it's going to be very easy for us to look at it. We are just simply writing 8th edition, volume A, for example. That's not an anthology of English literature. Hadith, how are we going to handle hadith? We're going to omit the hadith from your reference list completely because APA said no religious references. However, sometimes your instructor insists on figuring out which translation have you used. So the English translation of Sahih al-Bukhari, in this case, you're actually going to write it this way. We're already familiar with the fact that we put the editors first, or the editions, and then the translators. Author in an organization, very similar to what we've already said. We're going to alphabetize works with no known author by their title, right? And then we're just going to, sometimes we use one term in a dictionary. Then we're actually going to specify that word that we've used. So this concludes my presentation. I want to really end my presentation by showing you guys again a slide that I start with at the very beginning, where I was talking about APA and MLA. So remember, everything we've been talking about is for social sciences like psychology, linguistics, sociology, economics, criminology, and religion, and business and nursing. This is all under APA. For MLA, it's languages and literature with their different branches. And so both are important to know. Depending on the discipline, we're going to choose one or the other. And these are a set of my references. At this point, I'm going to ask you guys if you have any questions for me. Please go ahead and let me know.
As of Dalia, we do not have any questions, but let's stay on for maybe a few minutes and wait.
Okay, inshallah.
And just to say again, thank you. It was very beneficial, and I know that our students, our incoming freshmen, and even students who need to retouch APA citation style will find this webinar and this presentation very beneficial. It was very detailed, full of a lot of examples, and obviously the recording is going to be available on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, and that's A Continuous Charity. So it's definitely something that can be circulated and benefited from later on. And I want to remind everybody that, if you want to continue learning about APA citation, or if you want just a quick guide on what was covered today, visit acceducate.org/student-resources. You can find that right at the bottom of the screen. You'll be able to go to that page and download a PDF. And lastly, go to acceducate.org/live5. This presentation was sponsored by Live5. It's an initiative started by A Continuous Charity. And essentially, ACC raise money so they can give students interest-free loans so they can pursue their higher education dreams to study at cost. But unfortunately, there's so much demand out there that we're not able to meet everyone's requests and needs. And that's why ACC Live5 started. Essentially, it's a $5 a month club, and we want to get as many subscribers to that as possible so we can continue helping more and more students.
Barakallahu feek. I can actually end with dua, and I want to thank ECC for hosting this and for reaching out to me, and may Allah bless everybody that works for such an amazing cause. May Allah bless your brother Imran. It's such an amazing thing to know that we have those halal loans where our students don't have to pay any interest and any fa'idah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of them. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين ربنا تب علينا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم اللهم أعنا وأعن المسلمين اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا يا رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبعه بإخلاص إلى يوم الدين وارض عنا معهم أجمعين اللهم آمين اللهم آمين اللهم آمين.
Thank you one more time, Sister Dalia. And I think since we don't have any questions, we can wrap it up. So thank you one more time, and I hope we can have you on ACC Live 5 in the future for another important topic for our students. And to everyone that participated and benefited from today's webinar, thank you for being patient with us and getting through the presentation. If you have any recommendations on topics you'd like to see covered, please just do leave your comments in the actual videos in Facebook and YouTube, and we will definitely go ahead and start working on that. Thank you guys. Everybody have a good evening. Assalamu alaikum.